Hi, I'm Brenda Jo Robyn. I am the CEO and founder of Competitive Edge Insurance, a boutique brokerage where we focus on risk mitigation and management for businesses of all sizes. We are here today with my good friend and colleague, Tracy Ward. Tracy, thank you so much for coming here today and speaking with all of us. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help companies move forward?
Absolutely. And thanks so much, Brenda Jo, for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity. So, my organization is really focused on providing strong strategic HR support. We really start by making sure that companies have a strong foundation. That includes really clear expectations, policies, and procedures, and programs to help take care of their employees. But the things that I really love focusing on are really investing in people and creating an environment and a strong culture where they can thrive. So a lot of times that means really working with leadership to look at the programs they're offering, look at how are they making the work interesting, having their employees be engaged so that they're taking ownership in the position and that the company is really their company and they're giving their best to everything that they're doing. I feel like that's the best win-win situation because employees feel like they can be successful, they're invested, and the company benefits because they're bringing all that extra energy and effort to the work that they're doing. So I would say one of my main focuses is really focusing on that culture development and looking at what is that company's secret sauce? What's their recipe for how they're different from other organizations? Because that's something that they can use to attract people to come work with them, and that's what's going to keep them staying with the company.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how things have changed. We went through some amazing changes in the workplace from pre-COVID to post-COVID. What do you think, or what are you seeing are the top areas of concern floating up to the top for your clients today?
That's a really good question. There has been so much that has evolved with COVID and just how companies operate. And I think also some of the expectations that employees have. So, a lot of times, what I am seeing is that you're seeing employees or candidates really asking for more flexibility with work. That can look like flexibility with the hours or schedule, but it's also the ability to maybe have the option to work remotely sometimes. And that is still something that companies have different philosophies around. But I think by and large, most organizations have moved to more of a hybrid environment where they give individuals the opportunity to work remotely some days, but they want them to be in an office environment where it's easier to collaborate and communicate and have meetings where you can see the interpersonal interactions and have those kind of side conversations about how people are doing. So those things are really important. And if you are fully remote, because a lot of companies have decided that's actually more economical and a good way for them to operate, one of the things you may want to do is really create those intentional touch points for employees to connect. So it might look like a virtual coffee, or you buy everybody lunch and everybody gets together and has their lunch, but they're also able to have conversation and have some of those conversations around what did you do on the weekend, or what are your vacation plans, and to be able to get to know each other on that more personal level.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that communication and making sure that that communication is throughout the entire company. I know that this hybrid environment has been very difficult for a lot of companies to implement in a very strategic way. And there are areas in which we see there's claims that are popping up, and things such as work work time claims. You're emailing me at 9 o'clock at night. Does that mean I get to log in for overtime? So how do you see, or what are some of the strategies you've been able to develop to address some of those issues, and maybe even some of the ergonomic issues? We see some employees, sitting on their couches and working from the couch, which may not be the best ergonomically. And how are companies, addressing those issues?
Those are really good points that you brought up. So for one, having expectations around remote work is really important. And I definitely would recommend having a remote work agreement that outlines expectations for employees. So some of the things that I have included would be expectations around meetings. So when you are remote, you still want to actively participate. So it means having your camera on, having a suitable workspace. We want that engagement still, even though, they're not present physically, but also for other people that are on the meeting, it can be disengaging if you can't see people's expressions. And there's an energy that comes from being able to see everyone else. So having cameras on, making sure that people are available during normal business hours, that they still need to be accessible, through email, phone, all the normal communication channels. Having a suitable work environment, which means still being safe, even though you're in, your own office space at home, but you still want to make sure that it's conducive to being able to work in a professional way. And a lot of times the ergonomics is something that gets missed, or they might have a proper setup, but that's not actually where they are working. They're laying in bed or at the kitchen table. And we want to make sure that we're preventing some of those longer term types of issues that can come from repetitive motion and not properly having good ergonomics, which I know you're well versed in some of those types of claims and how costly those can be. And I would say prevention is really important to even ask them to provide you pictures of their setup, or make sure that the company is purchasing ergonomically correct equipment so that they can set up a station instead of using maybe a kitchen chair, that they have more of an office setup and office type of furniture that's adjustable.
So let's go back to the hybrid versus fully remote versus in office. And I'm curious to find out what issues that your clients have hired you specifically to come in and address because they have a claim or a potential litigation pending due to some of these HR issues that we're seeing moving. Somebody decides that they want to come back into the office and there's not a space for them, or perhaps somebody who was in a hybrid has decided, hey, you know what, I really like to be fully remote because I'd like to move out of state.
Yes, one of the things that I have clients reach out around is maybe a situation where during COVID, they allowed individuals to work remotely, and then the company ended up going back to the office, and now someone is requesting an accommodation to work from home. I would say that, in terms of HR practices, sometimes that reasonable accommodation and the steps that are involved in that, it's very complex, and it's not as common that HR professionals deal with it. So sometimes they may not know how to navigate through that type of situation. But you really want to make sure that you are engaging in an interactive process, which means talking to the employee, finding out, what are the needs that they have, inquiring with their doctor about what accommodations they need. But in that process, making sure that the doctor has a copy of their job description, because the job description will tell them what physical requirements are needed, the type of work, the nature of the work. And so it's important to have a doctor provide the medical certification with them knowing that information. You might, ask questions around how long does this need to be? Is this a very short duration? What types of breaks does this individual need? Is there a different type of equipment or setup that they need? And all of that information allows the company to then decide, what things can you accommodate, what, maybe there's some back and forth discussion around, we can't do A, but what about B, C, or D? And then allow the employee to say, oh, actually, C would be great for me. And then you're mutually deciding on what is going to help them to be successful. So I would say with those types of situations, it's not a black and white yes or no. It's often, an iterative process of really looking at information. It might evolve over time, but continuing to make sure that you are involving the person in the discussions, because that makes them feel respected. It creates an environment where they feel like they can still contribute, even if it might be a slightly different format than what it was before.
It's really interesting. That's a very fine line that you have to walk in this type of a situation. And we're always recommending that any company that has employees have an EPLI policy, because this is where it's going to help. You may actually misstep, not knowingly, creating these policies and procedures and discussions, and maybe misreading the doctor's report. And the employer feels one way and the employee feels another way, and it could cause a bit of contention. And the EPLI policy cannot take away that tension, but what it can do is, if it moves to be contentious, then provide for defense for the employers. And it's a really small piece of risk mitigation that employers can implement, so that they feel okay walking this fine line. So they feel like they're protected in case they misstep a little bit. So it's good that you discuss those things with them and make them understand the different nuances between things that might be in or outside of ADA compliance versus things that might be in or outside work hours or discrimination in terms of any kind of disabilities.
Definitely. And that's one of the things I love about you, Brenda Jo. You're always looking at how to protect the clients, and you're so diligent about making sure to be thorough and looking at policy language and educating companies about, what coverage do they have, what coverage should they be looking at. And EPLI, I find, especially for smaller organizations, they're not always aware of all the benefits of having that. And sometimes I come in and a company may not have that, and I explain, here are the benefits of having this type of policy. And also, when you combine that with good HR practices, like having your handbook, having your job descriptions, having, good documentation, that's all favorable for the carrier to look at your policy and, what premium they're going to assign. So definitely, I think EPLI is a really good proactive mitigation practice, because I always tell companies, if you get sued, even if you win, you lose, because the cost of defending a claim is so expensive.
Yeah. Right now, it's moving. So the cost of a EPLI claim has been around $125,000 on average. When it goes to trial, it's around $550,000, and that was about 2 years ago. And now we're seeing those go up even more with the cost of living increases, inflation. It's quite enormous. Sometimes $1 million limit isn't enough anymore. So it's really important for companies to understand the cost of litigation, and also to look at the carriers as partners. To be honest, you talk about practices and procedures and handbooks and things like that, and many of the EPLI carriers will go ahead and take a look at your handbook, take a look at policies and procedures, and give you back recommendations on how to also tighten things up even further. So it can be a very good partnership.
Yes, that's a really good point, because I think it's really helpful for companies to really maximize the resources around them. So leaning on you as a broker who can, share your expertise, looking at what carriers or providers are, providing support to the company, and asking them to, take a look at different things, to review or give advice and guidance, because a lot of times those are free services, and all you need to do is ask, and you can benefit from learning best practices or suggestions from those experts.
Yeah, I think a lot of times companies are afraid of insurance companies, and they see it as a necessary evil instead of an actual partnership. And that's really what it's there for, is to work together. And yes, you're paying a fee to partner with them. So that in case something happens, they're defending you, and so it's really important to be able to convey that to all of our clients, that insurance is not a necessary evil, but one of the quivers that you have in your excuse me, one of your arrows in your quiver to use, along with my HR consultant to go to bring into a company and share with them things that they can implement. I wanted to touch on another thing that we really hadn't talked about, and that is workers' comp claims. And what are you seeing out there with your clients in terms of workers' comp claims? And the reason I asked is we're seeing an uptick. And that usually happens when the economy is unstable or is downtrending. We usually see increase in workers' comp claims. And I'm curious to find out currently in the last 6 to 8 months what your clients are sharing with you.
Yes, I would say if you look at some of the trends, in past practice, I've noticed that where there's an uptick in, people filing leaves of absence, or, employee complaints or concerns being raised, and workers' comp, sometimes you see some of those trends occur in those three areas. And really what that shows is that for a company, there may be underlying, concerns or issues coming on. Maybe employees are worried about the stability of the organization. In one case, I have had a situation where it was noticed and, communicated by the company that financially they weren't doing well. And I think because of that, employees start feeling like layoffs may be coming, and then they might, put out for a workers' comp claim or a leave of absence. So those are some of the things that I think it's just good to be conscious of. And, I always believe it's really important to, be aware, be mindful, and be paying attention to how your employees are doing. Because if you're noticing signs that there's concerns, it's really important to check in on them. Mental health is a huge topic right now in the HR space. People are still struggling with a lot of different things. And I think if you're not checking in on your employees, that's when they feel you don't care. And it's when employees get angry that they tend to file claims. If they feel like you're really doing a good job, it still may happen, but it's not as common. It's more of a situation where they feel like you haven't helped them and they feel like there is no other recourse.
Yeah, you're circling right back again to that point of communication. And that is so important in any company, to be able to communicate across all lines of management and to make sure your employees are heard. They're an integral piece of your company. If you don't have the employees, then you're really not moving that company forward. Tell me, what other partners would you recommend to your clients to create the whole suite of activities and areas of expertise to help them along with your services?
I would say that to your point, the insurance carriers often have, resources internally, whether that's loss control consultants or, other resources within their firm. So I think exploring and being aware of, what is included with my insurance policy, what kinds of things can I tap into? That can be really a positive way to impact, how you move forward and practices you implement. Your occupational medical clinic is also a really good resource. Some companies have pre-employment screening practices, or, if someone is injured, you could even, have them go to your medical clinic, again, providing them with information about what is included in terms of that specific job and physical expectations, so that the doctor can properly evaluate that. Your occupational medical clinic as well, if you had a question about someone who has been out, you could get a second opinion, so there are ways that you could leverage those different resources to help you and to give some advice and guidance on maybe some things that they've seen or suggestions, and really for them to talk to the employee and also show, again, that level of concern and support on, we want to get you back up to speed. Maybe some physical therapy can be helpful for you, but just encouraging them that you're really wanting to make sure that they can be able to be successful in their job and get back to doing the full extent of that position.
Yeah, you're again, the communication with all these different resources. I keep hearing you say. I'm so excited that you have been able to join us here today. You've shared so much with us. You know, you're my go-to. I send everybody your way because you got your finger on the pulse of what's happening. You're keen on all the new legislation that's coming forward and that the stuff that's already been implemented January 1st. Tell us, how can people get a hold of you? How can they, reach out to you and use your services?
Sure. So our website is forwardtalentstrategies.com. I'm on LinkedIn. You have my contact information that we could, share on here. And, I just so highly respect you. I think we both have, commonality with being lifelong learners and always wanting to continue learning and growing. And honestly, just love supporting people that are like-minded and always wanting to do the best for their clients. So I really appreciate you, Brenda Jo, for having me and being able to chat about some of the things that have been going on recently.
Yeah, I love it. We're definitely part of the Mutual Admiration Society here, and I look forward to speaking with you again on other things. I have so many more questions, as you know, in the HR space. We could go on for hours on the different areas. So I invite you to come back and share more with us. And again, thank you for participating today.
I would love it. Thank you so much.